it's Hailey, and today I'm going to be talking about 10 bookish worlds that I would love to visit. So today's video is sponsored by Crown of Coral and Pearl by Mara Rutherford. This book inspired this video because it is set in this oceanic village, which sounds so cool to me. Like, a fantasy ocean village is just everything I want from a fantasy book, honestly. So the main character, Nora, lives in Verenia, which is this small ocean village owned by this larger nation of Alera, and the princes of Alera have always chosen the most beautiful maidens from Verenia to marry, but Nora has spent her entire life dreaming that one day it would be her until a childhood accident leaves her with a scar on her face, and it becomes apparent that her twin sister, Zadie, is going to be chosen instead. But then Zadie ends up getting in an accident herself, and she is gravely injured, and Nora is sent in her place. So she ends up having to unexpectedly navigate court and finds out that there are a lot of things that are hidden within court that she has to try and figure out on her own. To top it all off, she finds herself growing closer to the prince's brother instead of the actual prince that she is betrothed to, which obviously complicates things but definitely makes for a very interesting read. So between the sister relationship in this book and falling for the wrong guy and the oceanic fantasy world, I'm definitely intrigued and can't wait to get into this. So thank you very much to them for sponsoring this video. I will have a link down below so you guys can check this book out. So I was inspired by that to talk about some fantasy worlds that I would really love to visit, and I'm going off of the idea that I would be safe if I were exploring these worlds. Nothing would be able to touch me because in reality, I'm fine to stay where I am, safe and sound. I'm an Enneagram type 6, and you can, like, if you know Enneagram, you know what that means. Basically, I'm terrified of everything, so the idea of going to a fantasy world, I'm just like, there are so many things that could go wrong and so many things that could happen. Yikes. First up is, of course, the iconic, the very cliche, but like, honestly, it's the coolest fantasy world that there is, arguably. No, I mean, there's so many, but it's up there, and that is the Wizarding World from the Harry Potter books by J.K. Rowling. I feel like any book lover and anyone who's read this series or even watched the movies would love to visit the Wizarding World. There's just something about it that makes you feel at home, and all the magic, all the possibilities. It's definitely a world that is alive with possibility, and it's just so well built that I feel like it also feels like it could be real. So it gives you the hope that you could actually go there someday, even though you definitely couldn't, but like, you can keep on dreaming. The dream will stay alive. I just would love to have a butterbeer at the Leaky Cauldron. Like, I've been rereading this series recently, and it has just made me want to go to that world so badly. Next is another one that's pretty obvious, but it's also not that obvious because this is definitely one of the worlds that would terrify me, and that is Wonderland from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. So Wonderland, well, beautiful and whimsical, it also rejects Alice entirely. Like, everything about it is just so cruel to her, and she's so curious but also terrified at the same time. So I think that it would be a very scary place to go to. So many things happen, and it's definitely somewhere where you don't know what's what, and it would be so difficult to navigate that landscape, but without the risk, it would be a lot of fun to meet all the Wonderland creatures and see that world because it is just very cool. And there are so many different reimaginings of it as well. Like, so many different illustrators have taken their interpretation of it, and I mean, I have so many of them. I have like 70 plus copies. So it's definitely a world I'm familiar with, and one that in theory would be lovely to visit. Next is the world from Snow Like Ashes by Sarah Rosh. So this features nations. Specifically, there are the rhythms, but I'm focusing more so on the nations that have to do with the seasons. So there's a winter nation, a fall nation, a summer nation, and a spring nation, and I love that idea that there are these different nations that have that season that decides how they are and how their people are, and I just thought that was one of the coolest concepts. I've never read anything like it before. I'm sure that there's other books out there that are like it, but I thought it was really unique, and seeing the different people from the different nations collide was very cool. So definitely would love to travel through the seasons as I traveled through this landscape. Next is Range from Incarnate by Jodi Meadows. This is actually a really old book. book. It's one of the first ones that I read when I started BookTube, and I love the idea of this world because it kind of takes a lot of traditional fantasy elements, like there are dragons and it's just a whimsical world, but it has the added aspect of the people in it have been reincarnated for millions of years, so it's a very developed world at the same time, and with the same people being there, like, that just is fascinating to me. So I would love to interact with the people of this world, and definitely dragons, like, that's just cool. So it would be very cool to explore this world. Next is, of course, Leigh Bardugo's Grishaverse. I could not talk about worlds that I'd love to visit without talking about this because it's one of the coolest worlds that I've ever read about. Like, it's this gritty sort of fantasy reimagining of Russia, and I love the grit that comes with it. That's honestly my favorite part. Like, it's very industrial revolution, sort of steampunky, and I love that. I love the idea of like going to Ravka and hanging out with Kaz and the gang and all the people from Six of Crows, and it would just be so much fun. And I think that Leigh Bardugo has done a fabulous job of building up this really cool universe with the Grisha and seeing their different power ranks and everything. Like, I would just love to learn more about it and to learn firsthand. Next is Curveball by Stephanie Garber. So Curveball is definitely somewhere where I would be terrified to go because it tries to completely reject you, kind of like Alice with Wonderland. Its sole purpose is really to confuse you and have you wondering like what's what is real, what is not real, what am I imagining, and the idea of that is absolutely to me, but it's also something that's really cool to read about and really cool to think about and put yourself in that universe. And it's definitely a universe that sucked me in and made me feel like I was actually there as I was trying to figure out this sort of mystery that's going along in this story and trying to piece together things and like figure out what is real, because I still don't even know, honestly, and that's kind of cool. Similarly is the Gomorrah Festival from Daughter of the Burning City by Amanda Foody. I thought this was so cool. It's a magical circus, and anything that is a magical circus is definitely somewhere that I would love to visit. Like, even the Night Circus, and I don't really like that book, but I would love to visit the Night Circus. I think it would be so cool. But the Gomorrah Festival specifically has these illusions, and there are all sorts of different powers that the different circus performers have, and I would love to see that. I just think that would be a world that would completely suck me in, just like Curveball, because circuses just get me for some reason. I think they're very cool, but also kind of creepy, but very cool. Next is Furthermore by Tahara Mafi, which is definitely a world where you're like, what's up, what's down, what is happening, what? And it's a world that I think was partially inspired by Wonderland. It definitely reminds me of Wonderland. I love the idea of color and the fact that the main character is the only one who doesn't have color and doesn't have this power, and this book just builds up this really vibrant landscape that you get to explore alongside Alice. I mean, I feel like the inspiration is very obvious. The main character's name is Alice, but stepping into that whimsical universe of Furthermore definitely caught my attention and made me want to be able to explore beyond the reaches of this book. Next is Ren Thea from the Queen of Blood series by Sarah Beth Durst. I've only read the first book of this. I really need to read the other two because I do own them, but I haven't gotten the chance to get to them yet. But this is a fantasy world that honestly, just looking at the cover, I'm like, that is somewhere where I want to go. I want to go right there, right with that doggy, the good boy. I want to hang out with him. But it's just such a beautiful natural landscape, and the idea of spirits that happens in this book. There are these spirits that everything contains, and that's what rules the universe, and sometimes the spirits are nice, other times they're not. And if I remember correctly, there's like a school and it's in a tree. Like, there are so many things about this book. I really need to reread it because it was an awesome world to be in, and definitely everything that I'd want from a fantasy world. And finally is actually the book that I'm currently reading, so I'm not done it yet, but this world has completely sucked me in, and that is the world from Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. So this is our bookmarked book of the month for August. So our live show is going to be September 1st on my channel. I'm not sure if this video will be up before or after that, but I will have a link down below nonetheless. But this is honestly a book lover's fantasy book because the world features these great libraries that are magical. Like, they have magical books, and you have to like appease the books, and just the things that happen in this universe with the books, and there's sorcery as well. It's just Everything about it is so cool, and it's definitely a world that I have been thrilled to explore through this book because I love a bookish fantasy world. It's just awesome. So those are all the bookish worlds that I would really like to visit. There's definitely more, but I felt like keeping my list to 10 was a solid place to stop. But please do let me know which bookish worlds you would like to visit. They don't have to be fantasy. I just feel like that's kind of like the easiest way to go with this, especially since I don't really like sci-fi that much. But don't forget to check out Crown of Coral and Pearl by Mara Rutherford. Thank you very much to them for sponsoring today's video. I'm so excited to dive into this book, and you should definitely check it out too. Dive into. That was funny because it's ocean. You get it? Puns! But I will have a link down below so you guys can check this book out. So thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!